Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I finally managed to get my Sankey female to spawn. It was a stroke of luck really. I came onto the pond this morning and she'd already begun to spawn in the main pond, so I quickly caught her up with a couple of the males that had been chasing her, which were of the same variety, and placed her into a spawning area. This was done before I placed them in. I used one large Showa male and then two smaller Sankey males. As you can see here, she was releasing a fair few eggs in the bucket I had her in, but luckily it wasn't too many. But I wanted to get her in as quickly as possible just to avoid losing too many eggs or getting too stressed out. But the males were all good, they were all happy, and they were chasing her previously, so I was quite happy with that, because it was a good chance they would spawn in this area. Now I got to work on placing her in first. The water was a bit green at the moment because we're having a bit of an algae bloom. It's nothing not unhealthy for the fish at all. It's just a bit just looked quite bad, but it's fine apart from that. But I got to work on placing the males into the spawning area as well. At this point, I hadn't added the brushes yet, just to sort of let them have a bit more space before I put the brushes in. But luckily, using the sock net, it's quite easy to get the fish into the spawning area. But just start off with, I placed the female in, and I put the other three males in. At this point, I only put three males in. That was because those were the three I could catch. I had one more I wanted to get, and I mean, this male was literally like 4 inches long, so it wasn't going to harm the female at all. But I was making sure to keep a close eye on her. I'd sometimes like to use the smaller males just because it helps fertilize more eggs, really. And having like males that are 4 inches long, it doesn't really affect the female. But as you can see here, once I put the brushes in, they got right back to spawning. It is one of the tactics I like to use, is where I let the fish start to spawn outside of the pond and then place them in the spawning area. Although I did catch this a little bit late, but she still had about 4,000 or 5,000 eggs left in her. But yeah, straight away, as you can see, the larger male was really the main fish that chased her to begin with. Because like I said, he's the only one who could really barge her where she needed to go. Now, she was quite keen to go around the spawning area, but he was the main one following her, which is why I added in so many extra males, because they're so small. And they're too, I guess, scared, because they're just so much smaller than her, they don't really want to follow her around. But, in no time at all, he started to push her around, and because of him pushing her around, the smaller males sort of followed behind her and fertilize the eggs behind her. But he was like sort of the main driver in the beginning. But I had to keep a close eye on her just to make sure she was okay. But as you can see here, she sort of was taking the initiative, sort of going around, brushing herself up against the brushes and such. If you're wondering why I have a cloth in the spawning area, that's because the actual net on the frame, the holes are too big and the eggs will normally just fly out. So the cloth just sort of helps catch up any eggs that sort of go off excess. Also, the cloth actually catches quite a lot of eggs as well, especially when the fish got the side of the nets. When they spawn on the side of the frame, a lot of the cloth will catch up a large amount of the eggs. But I just sort of sat and watched them for about 10 minutes just to make sure they were all okay. You can see the smaller males there are sort of coasting behind. They weren't really pushing her, but they were just sort of following and fertilizing the eggs behind her. But they were all doing a great job, and I just sort of made sure she was okay for the first 20 minutes, and then I went off and left them by themselves. Now, the female herself is a longfin Sankey, and she's also Deutz as well, she hasn't got any scales, which was not great. I would have preferred a short fin and scaled Sankey female, but I don't have one at the moment, so this was the other alternative. And then the male was, well, a Showa, and then the rest of them, well, two of them were Sankey, and then one of them was a Kohaku, but two of them were Jinrin, or three of them were Jinrin, and one of them was just a regular. The Kohaku and the smaller Sankey were both from Kotobuki Koi Farm. If you'd have seen my previous videos, you would have seen that these were actually the fry I got like 3-4 years ago maybe. But these two in particular didn't grow very fast because at a certain point the tub had to be changed and didn't have enough space. But they're okay now, they're growing quite fast. They were just sort of coasting around the edges. The other male was sort of not really that interested. I don't know quite why. I think it may be because he was quite tired because he could have been spawning with her previously. But they sort of just did follow the larger males and female around as they sort of tried to spawn. But that was okay because after a while they did start to properly follow as these two started to spawn around her. She quite liked this little bulge in the neck, so I think it sort of gave a sort of covering area where she felt the eggs would be safe. But she was extremely fat, as you can see here. She was just still full of eggs, even though she'd been spawning for ages. And as you can see, the smaller males start to pay more interest. This is their first time spawning. So that's the reason I put them in there, is now that they'll sort of know what to do. They know what to do anyway, but it just gives them a little bit more experience. It's the same with your females, because I have got some other Sankey females that I could use, but it would be their first spawn, and therefore the eggs wouldn't be as good as, say, a fish that spawned 3 or 4 times like this one here. She spawned a fair few times, so the eggs would be much better quality. And she sort of knows what's going on, as you can see here. She's sort of going along the side as the males follow her here. This is probably some of the best footage I got of them, as they were sort of coming up the side here. I put this net on top as well, just to prevent any of the other males getting in. It sounds unbelievable, but I have had it where males have jumped inside the net and then gone and spawned with her. And the reason I don't want that is because a lot of my other males are metallics, and if they get in there, they can ruin the spawning because they're going to mix up all the genes with the fish, and you can't spawn a metallic with a Sankey. So that was just sort of the main idea behind that. But that's enough talking, I'll leave this footage for you to enjoy now. And then about 3 hours later, I came back to see how they were doing. By this point, the female was quite skinny, which I could see from afar. So I realised it was about time to get her out. I didn't want to leave her in there for too long and then risk her being overexhausted and then dying. I hadn't had that happen to me before, luckily, yet, but I know it has happened to some people. So once I saw that they'd started to slow down this morning, I went to go check up on them. And as you can see here, they were a lot less enthusiastic, but there was just thousands of eggs over the brushes, which was a good sign. Even on the outside of the thing here, like on the clamp, there were eggs literally above the waterline, which was a great sign, obviously. So I got to work on catching her up, and as I was right, you can see here she's a lot skinnier, and so this was a good sign for me. It meant she was done spawning. So I got to work and immediately put her back in to sort of help her. I let her back into the pond just so she could rest. Luckily none of the males in the actual main pond showed any interest in her at this point, which was a good sign. As you can see, here's a close-up of the 2 small males I was talking about. These are both from Cutterbook Koi Farm. That one there is the Sankey I was on about. Quite a nice fish. And then that was the Kohaku I was on about. Pattern-wise, the Kohaku's not great, but just in terms of the colour strength and the body shape, I quite like it. And then these are the 2 larger males. The smaller Sankey there, and the larger Showa here. That was like my main male, if I'm honest. I've used him like plenty of spawnings this year. And then this one here is probably one of my favourites, just in terms of the strength of the colours. But yeah, those were the males I had used. But they were just a lot smaller than her, bar this one guy here, which was basically the main reason behind using him. And when all was said and done, I had about, a fair few, 1,000 eggs in here. I don't know the exact amount, but the entire spawning area was covered. Even above the waterline, there was plenty of eggs on the clamps and on the fabric. So, the eggs had been splashed really high up. But luckily, it was a good sign. All the brushes were coated in thousands of eggs. So hopefully in 4 days we can see some of them hatch. But yeah, that was a great sign. And then I decided to move them inside because I had great success hatching eggs in here. As you would have seen in my previous video, I have hatched about another few thousand eggs inside here. And the main reason behind that is the water quality and the heat in here is just slightly better. It's a lot warmer in here. And then for whatever reason, the fry just hatch a lot better in here. They're a lot healthier. I think it's just because of the heat of the water. Here you can have an underwater shot of the eggs to give you an idea of how many are actually on the brushes. They have a yellow tinge right now, but over the next few days I can sort of tell if they are fertilised or not, because they will go white if they're not fertilised. I did place these little metal bars over the top just to keep the brushes pushed down so the eggs didn't go out the top, but that was about it really. Anyway, that is it for today's video, guys. Hope you did enjoy. I'll update you in about 4 days when they hatch and we can sort of have a look at them then. But until then, see you in the next one.